Hey, this is Jack, and this video is for you if you're a woman who has the tendency to attract emotionally unavailable guys. Now, if that's you, I want you to kind of buckle up and listen to this. Some of this may not be completely intuitive to you. Some of it may be counter to advice that you've heard, but this is my best efforts to do a real deep dive on this topic and to really get to some practices that can help you, and they may seem unusual because they're not things that you likely have heard about elsewhere. So I'm going to get right to it, but I want to put this caveat in place that if this is your pattern, you probably have a little bit of work in store, right? If you've been doing this pattern over and over again, I want you to imagine that you might have to really look at this kind of squarely as something that you want to take ownership for doing something differently in your life. And you may need to give yourself permission to learn. And what I mean by that is, rather than being in a perspective of why do I just keep attracting these men? Why can't this be easier? Why is this still happening for me? You may actually need to give yourself a period of time where you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to take aim at learning how not to attract emotionally unavailable men. And that might take you weeks, it might take you months to really learn how to do that, but it comes from actually fully giving yourself permission to learn. Okay, so on that foundation, let's get to principle number one. And this is the 80-20 principle, but it's this very specific application of the 80-20 principle. So you may know the 80-20 principle comes from an Italian economist, Pareto. It's sometimes called Pareto's law or Pareto's principle. And what it usually means is you get 80% of your results from 20% of your efforts. So focus on those 20%. I'm going to give you a different way of looking at it that I think is really useful in relating. And that is, what is it like if you keep 80% of your attention and focus over here with yourself and only put 20% over there, in this instance with him? So you're keeping 80% of your attention here and only 20% over there. Now, if you practice this, it will probably feel really unfamiliar. It might feel rude or selfish or strange. And I want to let you know all of that's normal. I just want to invite you to practice it for long enough for you to start to see that if you keep more of your attention on yourself, you're actually more in tune with yourself. You're more able to tap your own guidance, your own higher self, and what it wants to tell you and what it knows about a particular situation or a guy in front of you. Said differently, the main reason I think that women keep going for emotionally unavailable men is because they're disconnected from their own guidance, their own intuition, their own knowing. And so part of practicing not doing that can be bringing the attention and putting it back over here with yourself. And by the way, if you do this, you'll probably find relationships of all kinds improving because you're basically learning how to value yourself as much as you value other people. And if you have a tendency to be over there in your attention with other people, I'm not making that wrong. There's something really brilliant and beautiful about that. And it might be that you're now learning how to integrate that into a more healthy way of being you. If you don't want to lose yourself to an emotionally unavailable man, you need to stay close enough to yourself to actually notice and see what is going on. So principle number two, I call drop the fantasy. And by drop the fantasy, I mean do your best to drop any expectations and hopes and fantasies about where this particular connection is going. And the reason I say that is because anytime you are idealizing the future or painting a possible future with him, the probabilities are that you're a little out of touch with reality. It's much better to date in the present. And what I mean by that is date who's in front of you. Date what is actually happening. Date what is actually going on, rather than projecting an idealized future or some story or romance or narrative about what could unfold. Now, that's not to say that brilliant things, beautiful things aren't going to unfold in the future. It's just to say, if they are going to unfold that way, you're going to be there to participate and enjoy them. You don't have to build up that idea in your mind, because oftentimes the trajectory that I see, having coached hundreds of women, maybe even thousands at this stage, is the reality is never quite as good as their fantasy, right? So what does that mean? It means disappointment, right? It means frustration. It means hopelessness. It means getting your heart hurt in a lot of instances, because you build yourself up that he's this and he's that and he said this and he did that and he'll be this to me and he'll do this for me and we're going to do these things. And a lot of that is really just a lack of presence. If you want to say it bluntly, it's like you're in your head, you're anticipating the future, and you've lost presence to what is actually happening here. If the future is going to be rosy with him, it's going to be rosy with him to some extent. You know, your participation is required, but that path of possibility can unfold for you. You don't actually need to keep painting and amping up the emotions in your system about what that future could be like. And just to give you a little example of this, you know, if you're dating a guy, let's say he's 45 years old and he's never been married or in a long-term relationship, what makes you think that he's suddenly going to be different for you? Now, you might have an internal dialogue that says, well, I think he's my soulmate. Let life prove if he's your soulmate. Don't you try and be the person who's standing in the face of all the data that suggests that this guy just doesn't partner easily. Right? That's not either what he wants or what he's built for or what he's available for. So, you know, part of this is actually slowing it down enough for you to notice what's going on. In my experience of supporting people in this territory, you rarely lose out by slowing it down. Typically, when you slow it down, you actually get a better handle on what is going on, and you start to separate your own fantasy and delusion from what is actually in front of you. All right, so point number 3, or way number 3, is using vulnerability as a filter. So this, just bear with me a bit, this might take a little bit to understand. So if you're vulnerable in a relationship, which is often hard to do, because oftentimes you've not had a great experience of that in the past. Possibly you've been vulnerable and you've gotten hurt, or you've been vulnerable and you don't feel like you've been heard and seen. And if that's true, I'm sorry. I know that happens and I know how hard it can be. And there is a way that you might be able to be vulnerable enough, just enough for you to notice, how is he with your vulnerability? When you are emotionally vulnerable, can he stay with you? Can he connect to you? Can he support you? Can he protect you? And if he's not available for any of that, as hard as it may be to see, that's your information that this isn't an emotionally available guy. So what I mean is, by you stepping into your vulnerability, stepping into some of those harder edges, not in a way that you can't come back from or recover from, but enough vulnerability that you really get him to show his colors. Is he interested in being with you in this territory? Because my sense is the right guy is going to want to be in that territory with you. Right? The right guy is going to want to support you through difficult emotional experiences, or just be with you, presence with you, witness you in your experience, in your color, in your emotionality. That the right guy will actually see those things as gifts to the relationship, that actually you're inviting him to get more connected to his own emotional life. But the emotionally unavailable guy will start to see that stuff probably as difficult. He'll probably or perhaps want to disconnect from you. Maybe he'll see that as too much, that he's just not available for that. And he has a right not to be available for that, but you also have a responsibility to notice it and take action accordingly, you know, which might be not investing in this as a long-term relationship possibility. In a sense, what I'm inviting you to do is take some short-term pain. If you're vulnerable and he really doesn't meet you there, or let's say worst case scenario, he even kind of rejects you there, or belittles you, or makes you small, or makes you overly dramatic or something like that, then that might hurt. Of course that might hurt. You're in your heart and you're being vulnerable. It just might hurt a lot less than you imagining you've got a future with this guy and then one day having the rug pulled from beneath your feet. And I know, again, from a lot of my coaching experience, that can be super devastating for people. That you've all this momentum, all this investing, all this fantasy, all this idea about where this relationship's going, and actually it's on a completely different track than you even realized. So that's why vulnerability can be a great filter and qualifier of men. Okay, the fourth way for you to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men is for you to notice if you are in something that we call, and this is a fancy name, but I'm going to break it down for you and make it real simple, in the frustration object relation. And what that means is that you have a background experience ongoingly, not just with men, of a frustration quality in your life, that things are often frustrated for you, right? Which means that you don't get to have them, you don't get to enjoy them. There's a sense of longing and anticipation for things that aren't quenchable, that you don't quite get the thing that you want, that often there's something that you desire in life and that you are blocked from it, you are frustrated from it. It's a bit like being in the desert, and you get the mirage, you get the appearance of an oasis of water, but it's not actually real. Do you have that experience in your life where there are things that you think you're going to get, but then for some reason you get overlooked, or you miss out, or someone else gets favored? And this isn't to say that all those experiences are false. They may be absolutely real. What this is an invitation to notice is if there is some unconscious part of you that is really inviting or participating in that particular game. Right? And we call it the object relation because object relations are the earliest sense that the developing child gets of self and other. Right? So subject, self, and object, other. So it's the relationship, it's the experience of the other. And from a really young age, there's a kind of quality and an affect, an emotional component to how the other occurs to you, how objects occur to you. Are they easy and you get them and they're nice and they're rewarding, or are they kind of difficult and distant and frustrated? And this might be your experience of men. Like, just imagine if you've got a little bit of a templating, and we're not even going to get into why that's there, but let's just imagine that that is there from an early stage of your life, that the things that you really want are frustrated to you, that you long and life doesn't meet you there, that you are misunderstood, that you are overlooked. If this is a core sense of self that you are carrying around, conscious or otherwise, you might start to get curious. And this is all I want to do in this video, is just invite your curiosity as to whether you may be participating in some kind of frustrated quality in your life. And if that's true, what would it take for you to start to really look for men that are emotionally available, that actually disconfirm, that don't confirm this core sense of self and belief you have that men are going to be unavailable to you? Do you see what I mean? It's like kind of waking up to the fact that, oh, I might have some core belief that men are unavailable, therefore, what do? I kind of go around confirming my belief, because that's what nearly all of us want to do. Lots of psychology points to our desire to confirm and have, to reduce cognitive dissonance, right? To kind of imagine that our beliefs are right about ourselves and other people. And so you go around seeking out emotionally unavailable men that confirm to you that men are emotionally unavailable, or that you don't deserve an emotionally available man. So all of that just to say, get a little bit curious about if this is a sort of template in you. And one of the ways you could notice this, if it happens not just in the realm of men, does it also happen in your career? Does it also happen in your friendships? Does it also happen with objects of desire anywhere in your life? All right, if you've stayed with me this far, I appreciate it. So I'm going to give you a little bonus fifth way into this topic. And this is something a little bit different. This is about a particular type of man who I'm calling the emotionally available, unavailable man. I'll say that one more time. The emotionally available, unavailable man. So this is a guy who's emotionally available, who connects with women emotionally, who is emotionally literate, who is in tune with their own emotions, who probably really likes it when you're emotional and wants to be with you and connect with you and is kind of safe in that way and non-threatening and a good listener. Maybe he's got a bit of nice guy persona going on. But you would look at him and say, yeah, this guy is genuinely, he's able to connect, right? And he can hear my problems. He's good in that domain. And yet, he's not really available for partnership. And I kind of just want to apologize that this kind of guy exists. I think at times in the past, I've been this guy. So just apologies for my own past around this, which is that if you are a guy that wants to connect and enjoys connecting, you may have a hard time distinguishing as a guy what you're actually available for in relationship. And you might create the sort of spaces that it's rare for a woman to experience with a man. And therefore, as a woman, you're thinking, well, this guy's great. He's safe, he's available, he listens, he's attentive, he gets me. I can have the conversations that in the past guys have just checked out or run a mile from. And I want to acknowledge that can be difficult. What I want to invite you to notice is, what is this guy saying about partnership? Is he actually available for partnership? Have that conversation with him. How committed is this guy in other areas of his life? Does he have a career that he's committed to? Does he have hobbies or pursuits that he's committed to? Is there a level of consistency and integrity that he shows up with the things that he cares about in his life? Because sometimes this kind of guy can have a little lack of backbone in a certain way, a lack of integrity or spine, or at his worst, he can have a little bit of a floaty kind of feel to him, that you don't really know how to pin him down, that he doesn't really take a stand easily for something, that he's not rooted in his own masculine essence, that there's something, maybe telling the truth isn't a strong point of his, maybe he breaks agreements easily, maybe there's a sort of slippery quality or a flexible quality that actually doesn't let you know clearly, okay, this is where this guy stands and this is what he's available for. Does he have the ability to provide and make money? And none of these are by themselves disqualifiers. I'm just sort of helping you build a little bit of awareness that this kind of guy often needs to wake up by taking more care of his own life, so that he's actually more committed to his own purpose, value, drive, which is the things that he wants to manifest in the world, and is a little bit obscured from that because of his attention on other people, which could include you as a woman. So I'm just throwing that in there as this little flavor of, again, could you be objective and notice that this guy, as open-hearted and as connecty as he may be, he's not actually ready to take on a committed relationship with you. Or if he is, it's at the expense of something truer in his, in his masculine direction. That it's almost like relationship has become such a priority that he's missing out on perhaps what he's here to bring and do in the world. And it may be subtle territory, but for a lot of you, if you could really notice this, it would really help you avoid committing and investing to a guy that's actually not an investable prospect. All right, I hope you enjoyed the 4+1 ways. Thanks for being with me in this. I'm loving doing these videos. Thanks for all the feedback. Please, if you haven't, subscribe to the channel. You can just see the box here or click on the bell icon. Releasing videos every week on personal growth and love and relationships. And again, I'm Jack. Thanks for being with me.